Good Saturday afternoon, everybody. Welcome into Believe in Steelers, powered by FanDuel. Jarrett Bailey, Todd Haley, the head coach of our program. We were not planning to be here today. We did a very fun show yesterday with Kurt Warner. Go and listen to that in the podcast feed. And, we led off the show talking to Kurt about, all right, the Steelers head coaching search continues. What are your thoughts on it? Kurt gave us a lot of good stuff. We plan to come back here on Monday and talk about the teams that we're going to be playing in the Super Bowl and, the head coaching search as well, and continue talking about all of that. But the Steelers decided to give us something to talk about in the interim. Mike McCarthy is officially the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was announced, maybe 2 hours ago, hour and a half ago at the time of recording. And yeah, it didn't take long for folks to react to it. So here we are to share our thoughts. Todd, I will give you the floor to share what you are thinking in terms of this hire before I share mine.
Well, good to be here, even though, I think we're both out and about preparing for this winter storm, whatever it's going to be. And Pittsburgh, I'm hearing it could be from, like 3 inches to 90 inches.
Yeah, I was going to say it could be flurries or it could be Armageddon. We'll find out here in the coming hours.
I'm out on the coast. I told you, and near Ocean City, Maryland, Bethany Beach. So ours shouldn't be quite as bad, but I refuse to buy into this storm panic buying. We have enough stuff in the freezer to survive. So, on the Steelers, I mean, number one, I have great respect for Mike McCarthy as a longtime coach in the NFL, a head coach, has had a lot of success. He's a Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah.
But and if the Steelers had fired Mike Tomlin, I might be a little more up in arms than I am now, because Mike, and I believe that, decided, that his time was done in Pittsburgh. So I might feel a little differently. I'm not going to go off the rails. He is a Pittsburgh guy. I'm kind of happy about that a little bit, in that, a lot of people within the Steelers organization through the years and years that they've been very successful, going all the way back to, hiring Chuck Noll. They've been a people person, organization, starting at the top with the Rooneys. So I got to believe that had somewhat of an influence, that he's from Homestead. I've been, when I was with the Steelers, I'd go to a Penguin game in the offseason, and, who would I see up there? Mike McCarthy cheering for the Pens. So I love Pittsburghers. I love Western PA. So going to be hard for me to disparage anything that he's done. As I said, though, if they had fired Mike, I'd feel a lot different than Mike stepping aside. And Tomlin, that is, because now we got 2 Mikes back to back.
Right.
Mike McCarthy, though, when you look at playoff records and some of the ills that have caused a lot of consternation with Steeler fans in general, it's been that inability to get back into those big games. The last one being one I was part of, when we had to try to beat Tom Brady up in Gillette, and we're unable to do it. So like I said, if it were a different scenario, I might be a little more up in arms. But this is a quality football coach that is a Pittsburgh guy. I think there is something to be said for that. Bill Cowher was a Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah.
A lot to be said for that. Mike Tomlin became a Pittsburgh guy. Chuck Noll, Ohio, there's a big crossover there. So I don't know. I'm not going to go, like I said, I'm not going to go off the rails, Jarrett. I'm going to, try to, keep calm and just, trust that the process went the way that everybody within the organization wanted it to go.
All right, so let me paint the picture for you. I told you this in the lobby, so I'll tell everybody how this happened. So me and my lady friend, we went to Giant Eagle, the Brentwood Giant Eagle, if you're really concerned about which one, to, just get some stuff. And pulling out, about to turn to go home, I feel my phone vibrate. I'm like, all right, let's see what's happening here. And out loud, I'm like, I'll be damned. They decided to wait until, I'm not expecting anything, and they hired a coach. I'll start with the positives. Mike McCarthy, offensive-minded head coach, something that fans have been kind of clamoring for a little bit in terms of one of the changes that they wanted was more offensive-minded guy. And Mike is that. If you look at the success that the Cowboys had when he was there, brief stint, only 5 seasons, but from 2021 to 23, they won 12 games in each of those seasons. And in those 3 seasons, their offense ranked 1st, 11th, and 5th. So proven success on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of questions regarding, all right, well, who's the quarterback going to be? Because that's, a big part of having offensive success. There's, the talk of, well, bringing in Mike McCarthy, maybe that makes it easier to bring back Aaron Rodgers. And this is where I start to get a little bit annoyed because, I very much praised Aaron for this past season because I think that he exceeded a lot of expectations. I think he exercised a lot of demons that he needed to exercise from his time in New York, proved that he can still be a capable starting quarterback and lead a team to the playoffs. Nothing left to prove. Very fun having you in Pittsburgh for a year, Aaron. Congratulations on the success. What I don't like is bringing in Mike McCarthy and then bringing in Aaron Rodgers to basically play back the hits like an old band getting back together. And for as good as Aaron Rodgers was in his prime and still a capable quarterback now, and Mike McCarthy is a quality head coach, but in their prime together, they won 1 NFC title game. So what is the Netflix reboot version of that going to look like when they're both older, they're both past their respective primes? I just don't see how high the ceiling gets raised with this move and the probable subsequent move of bringing Aaron back for another year. And when you look at the names that were rumored to be in the running for the job, it's a Chris Shula in Los Angeles, young defensive guy. So many sports books. I think, FanDuel was one of them who said, Chris Shula, very big name to watch in terms of the odds. And even the insiders who were saying, Chris Shula is a guy that they've liked for a long while and a name to really keep an eye on. Nate Shieldhouse, the pass game coordinator for the Rams, Brian Flores, Anthony Weaver, all of these younger guys, fresh voices that could have been the perfect types of guys to help usher in a new era in Pittsburgh. And the Steelers have done this before. That's been their blueprint. You hire a 34-year-old Bill Cowher. You hire a 34-year-old Mike Tomlin. With change comes big change. This doesn't feel like big change. This feels like going from an Altima to an Accord. It's the same car, man. Let's be perfectly honest. They're largely the same thing, just different brands. And like I said, Mike McCarthy, not a bad head coach, but Mike Tomlin wasn't a bad head coach either. It just felt like part of some parts of the game had advanced to certain degrees that maybe he hadn't. And it just would have made sense to start anew with a young head coach in a new era and really just have a fresh coat of paint. This just feels like a different shade of the same color of paint.
Yeah, and I understand frustrations. Before this ever happened, one funny note I'll give you, Jarrett, is a huge Steeler fan, grew up in Pittsburgh, Bethel Park, but now lives in Cleveland, and friends, parents of my son, and she texted me. She goes, "What's this?" And she pulled up Mike McCarthy's Wikipedia yesterday, and it said, current head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2026, with a dash, with nothing else. And I'm like, there's people that just work Wikipedia. They update
just for the
it.
fun of it.
I go, don't be gullible. And then this comes out today, and I'm like, all right, I'm sorry for anything I said. So that's just a weird note to be looked into, even though Dallas was after the Steelers in that chronological order. So, no, I understand frustration again. I said, and you said Kurt Warner was on with us yesterday, which everybody should check out. It was a great deal. There is that is a guy that knows quarterbacks in some of these situations and is always very enlightening. But he talked about Will Howard. How does the organization see him? Mike McCarthy's been out for a year. I've said multiple times on SiriusXM on here that how you answer some of these questions at these teams that have a deficiency at quarterback is going to be a big thing. It's just hard. Number one, Aaron Rodgers and Mike didn't, at the end, it was kind of tenuous.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a reason that ended.
Unless there's been some great repair, I still wouldn't jump to conclusions. I mean, don't jump off the Roberto Clemente bridge just yet. And I love Aaron, and I think Aaron was the best option for this past year. Is he the best option going forward? Is he a stopgap, as Kurt Warner talked about? Maybe Mike McCarthy did a deep dive on Will Howard and came in there and said, we can do it with Will Howard. Or maybe there's somebody else out there. We threw around Malik Willis, Snoop Huntley, some of those names. I just really felt that whoever came in there and answered that particular question the best, with the best kind of path or blueprint to this is how we turn this in the right direction, probably would have the best chance. So, I got to believe whatever was discussed, we won't know for a little while here, obviously. But, I think that's a big part of this. It's not just, we're hiring a homegrown guy from Homestead, like we did with Bill Cowher, just because he, has been a successful head coach. That goes against that bucks the trend with what the Steelers have done since 1969. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see a little bit, but I understand your frustration and everybody else's that has reached out to me here in a very quick fashion, since the news came out. But I've always been one kind of just stay down the middle. Let's wait and see how things kind of fall into place. So, that's kind of where I am, but I get it.
Yeah, and look, like I said, Mike McCarthy, not a bad head coach. That's not my problem with it. The main issue that I have is that there were much younger candidates, and Steelers history says, all right, they want to hire young so they can keep these guys around for a while. Mike McCarthy's 62, man. There's a good chance that they're doing this again in 3 years, 4 years, depending on how long he wants to continue coaching. So, that's the biggest drawback that I have. And, when it comes down to it, we're thinking about the moves that have been made in the past with, Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin. And we think about the things that have happened over the last decade or so. Now fans are going to really start asking questions about all right, are the Steelers entering this weird vortex that you'd never want to be in, which is a team with ownership that isn't all that great? And it's a fair question to ask, considering, when the late great Ambassador Rooney passed on, Art II took over, Art II took over, and things have been noticeably different in that span. And so with a hire like this, and again, I want to continue to reiterate, Mike McCarthy, you can do worse than Mike McCarthy as a head coach. And I think him going elsewhere, because John Harbaugh is an older guy that got hired by the New York Giants, but that's a young team who needed stability. This is an older Steelers team that it would have made a little bit of sense to maybe try a soft rebuild. And it feels like right now they're going to, more or less stay the course on being a mediocre football team that has a low ceiling and a high floor. And that's the last place you want to be in the NFL, is just continuing to be, win 9-10 games and not make it too far in the postseason and just continuing that cycle.
Well, I can't say it enough, Jared. That cycle, because they're a really well-coached team. I'm not in the camp of I feel like the game passed Mike Tomlin by. That cycle has continued with the inability to find that quarterback piece. You have to have that piece. When Mike McCarthy had it in Dallas, they won 12 games 3 years in a row. Now, Dak Prescott, I'm not putting any, a lot of things that happen in the playoffs in Dallas on Mike McCarthy, but Dak Prescott continues to try to get over the hump himself, kind of like we're going to watch tomorrow with Sam Darnold. Can he take that biggest step that you take as a quarterback? It's a quarterback problem. I'll say it again and again. I know 3 generations of Rooneys. I was a young kid with the Chief, and then Dan still as a kid, then Dan Rooney when I was coaching there, and Art the second obviously throughout it, along with a ton of other Rooneys that, it might be Seven Springs, that the Steelers would have their ski trip for everybody and we're hanging out. So, I don't know. I think the biggest issue, and that's why I say over and over again, whoever came into that interview process and gave the best answer to number one, Art the second, and then anybody else involved in that process about how you move forward and figure out the quarterback problem. That has been the issue. As much as everybody likes to say it's Mike Tomlin or it's this or it's that. The quarterback has to be solved. So that is really what I'm going to be watching really closely is, what path, what direction are they going to take to try to figure this out? And like I said, it might be, Mike McCarthy could have gone there and said, Will Howard, I watched every bit of tape. I was out at a couple practices secretly in training camp. This guy's the answer. I sat down with John Gruden, who did his little workout thing. You don't know. I mean, it just anything could have been, portrayed there that I have the answer. And I think if there was somebody that convinced Art the second specifically that they did have the answer, then you throw in Pittsburgh guy, like I said, and some of those things, and a guy that's won a Super Bowl, coached in Super Bowls. It'd be something that was in the realm of possibility that we see Mike McCarthy like we have hired.
Oh, funny enough you say that. So Ed Warder tweeted out about an hour ago saying that one of the elements Mike McCarthy provided the Titans and Steelers when he interviewed with them were videos and graphics of his long history of coaching and developing quarterbacks, beginning with Joe Montana with the Chiefs under Marty Schottenheimer. So he's been in this thing for a long time.
He understands quarterback play. So,
yeah.
If there's something you could say about Mike Tomlin, he understood people and how to push buttons, whether it's Ben or whoever was playing the quarterback position. But he's a defensive expert, even though he played receiver. He understood offense as better than any defensive coach I've been around, maybe equal to Bill Parcells. But he's not that's not where he cut his teeth, coaching quarterbacks, teaching quarterbacks. So Mike McCarthy does have that. So however whatever fork we take here at this point, and I'm feeling like it. There's no way Aaron Rodgers comes back. I know Kurt Warner said yesterday, he could come back, be a stopgap. But is that hindering the progress of whoever the decision is? So I don't know. But Mike McCarthy, you cannot take that away from him. He knows how to coach quarterbacks. He knows how to, get the most out of that position.
I'll throw some fun names at you because why the hell not? We're already here. I don't think, and I don't know if it would happen this year, and I have to go back and look at like the contracts and whatnot, and maybe it could. If Jerry Jones, if the Steelers called Jerry Jones and were like, hey, what'll it take to get Dak Prescott? I mean, does he listen? Maybe. I think he'll listen to just about anything. He traded Micah Parsons. I don't think he's above trading Dak Prescott. I think that there's a world where it could happen. I don't think it's, greater than, a 10% chance. But, I mean, if Omar's feeling frisky and it's like, what the hell? Let's see. Hey, Jerry, if I give you, a pair of first-round picks and, other assets that would be lesser than that, but, a package with those 2 first-round picks as our big, selling point for Dak, what do you say? I think there's a chance that Jerry would at least counter offer and be like, okay, how about this on top of that? And look, if you can get Dak Prescott, who, despite a bunch of narratives around him, when healthy, top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and that's one of the hardest things in
You're
sports
going
to
to tell me
find.
they're going to bring George Pickens back too?
Yeah, why not? Let's get the whole band back together. Yeah, let's see how that works. He's a free agent this summer. Maybe bridges can be mended. And sticking with Dallas, though, if they wanted to go the young route, the Cowboys have a young quarterback, the backup to Dak Prescott, Joe Milton, whom they acquired last offseason. So McCarthy, there's not really connective tissue there in terms of Mike McCarthy being with him. But if we're looking for options at the quarterback spot where you got to kind of take some swings here, Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, who's just a big freak of an athlete with a ginormous arm, but my God, is it sporadic when it comes to accuracy. There are a bunch of younger guys who were either early draft picks that haven't panned out, Anthony Richardson being one of them. There's a guy like Kyler Murray, who it's pretty heavily expected that he's going to get traded this offseason. I would prefer them to go one of those routes than say, and God bless him, I like him, but I don't want to see Kirk Cousins in a Steelers uniform next year. I don't think. As fun as it was to have Aaron for a year in Pittsburgh, I don't think that running that back makes a whole lot of sense. I'd rather them go a younger route at the position and see if there is anything there with an Anthony Richardson, or if you can get anything else out of Kyler Murray than with another old stopgap guy.
Yeah, that's what, if Coach McCarthy had a cut up of his development of quarterbacks, that's why I keep saying, how he answered that question. That is the biggest question within that Steeler building. It was when I was there, when Ben was still in his prime. What are we going to do? What's the next step? What we've seen is, when I was there, it was Kevin Colbert. Omar was part of the front office, but after I left, Omar, Kevin Colbert retired. I think there was no doubt in my mind when I saw some of the little more aggressiveness going on. I know Mike by nature is really aggressive thinking, and Omar obviously lent himself to that. So if you're looking for a different look to the Steelers as how they operate in the offseason, I think you're probably going to get it. Because that was probably in the conversation too. What's your mentality on acquiring, trading, finding players that are already in the league. So however that question, it might have been, Mike McCarthy could have gone in there and said, Kyler Murray is the answer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's why. And had a whole thing put together. I can't answer those questions. I don't know, who Mike McCarthy likes within the league. But that's why I keep saying however he answered that question, I'm sure it was better than what they have heard from any other guy that came in there and sat down through the interview process.
Yeah, and it's important for fans to remember that the new league year doesn't start until March. I believe it's March 10th this year, March 11th, somewhere in that vicinity. So any sort of move that Pittsburgh would make, they can't do it until then. So don't get angry if you don't see anything in terms of like, oh my God, they haven't done anything. Well, they can't in terms of moves like that, whether it be free agency or trades, until that new league year begins. So it's going to be another like 50 days until we get there. And my goodness, there's going to be so much speculation between now and then on who the quarterback's going to be, who the staff's going to be. I mean, we haven't even touched on that. He's got connections to obviously coaches from his time in Dallas. A name that I've seen a few times already is Al Harris, former defensive back in the league. He worked under McCarthy in Dallas. A name that's come up a few times as being a potential defensive coordinator. I believe he was the defensive backs coach under McCarthy in Dallas. So I mean, that's a name to pay attention to when he starts building his staff.
Biggest pain in the butt corner to play against when I was with the Bears, and he was playing corner for the Packers. Man, he was a pain.
I believe he was the one who had that pick against Matt Hasselbeck in the Seahawks, right? In overtime, ran it back for a touchdown.
You talk about having instincts and reading quarterbacks' eyes. I've really been impressed what he has done. Not surprised knowing that he was a heady player playing corner. Like I said, one of the I just dreaded having to deal with Al Harris. So I've paid attention to him, and he's done a really good job. So
Could be a good hire if he does decide to go that route, and one that I would be pretty on board with. When it comes to the offensive staff, like Mike's the play caller. He's always been like the offensive play caller there, so I'm not too nearly as worried as the offensive staff as I would be the defensive staff, considering that Mike's going to be the guy running the show offensively. But you want to have, I mean, this is another aspect to talk about. If you have, young guys on the staff, especially offensively, and we already touched on how long is Mike McCarthy going to be here. I mean, if you can have that guy built in on staff for when Mike McCarthy is no longer in Pittsburgh, to just similar to what Dallas did with Brian Schottenheimer, where they felt confident enough to just employ him, or what's the word? Promote him to head coach. Maybe they go a route like that where they have, a young assistant on the coaching staff, where when Mike does step away, they promote him. So that's obviously things for down the road to worry about. But yeah, Mike McCarthy, the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're going to see the coaches that he puts on the staff here in the coming days, weeks, and see where this thing goes. And once that new league year does begin, we'll see how aggressive that Mike and Omar are in free agency and in trades, because God knows over the last 2 to 3 years, they've been incredibly aggressive with trades, especially. So I'm not going to be surprised if we do, early March or mid-March, get a notification like, oh, wow, Kyler Murray's a Steeler. Who would have thunk it? We'll find out. But they got to get the quarterback position right. I mean, you've been hitting that nail on the head pretty hard, and it's, and it's factual, though. There's only so far you can go if you don't have the right guy. And the Steelers have kind of been the proof in that pudding over the past few years, where we know the pieces that they've had defensively. Cam Hayward's still playing at an all-pro level. They've drafted well with guys like Nick Herbig and Joey Porter Jr. They bring in a Jalen Ramsey, who was a Pro Bowler this year. And largely, if you don't have the pieces on offense to help get you enough points and over that hump, there's only so much that a defense can do. So we'll see.
That one piece, and Kurt Warner said it yesterday. If you don't have that piece, it obviously is doable. We've seen it. Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer, but everything else has to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I felt about the Steelers the last few years since, Ben got past his prime and it was kind of at the end. Is everything had to be perfect. And when it didn't go that way in the playoffs, it wasn't good enough to win. So you got to have that piece. So in complete agreement there with Kurt and you on that aspect.
And even in like recent years, like the Brad Johnson aspect, for example, well, the Buccaneers defense that year was one of the best of all time. The Trent Dilfer, well, the 2000 Ravens defense, often regarded as the best defense of all time. Nick Foles with the Eagles, that roster was just so well built, both offensively and defensively. Doug Peterson did a really good job of, I don't want to say dumbing down the offense, but simplifying it for Nick Foles and making him more of a passenger than a driver on that team, because he didn't have to be the driver. Like, you have to, if you want to go that route, which, as we see in today's NFL, that's not the smart route to go. We see the quarterbacks and the teams led by those quarterbacks that are consistently playing deep into the postseason, whether it's Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, they have the quarterback. And you got to get that right if you want to be taken serious as a, Super Bowl contender. Even teams like San Francisco, like, yeah, Brock Purdy's not Josh Allen, but he's a capable starting quarterback. And when you have a head coach like Kyle Shanahan to operate things, that certainly helps.
How would you feel about Jimmy G? Not as old as some of the the Russell Wilsons or Aaron Rodgers, but how would you feel about Jimmy G? Mac Jones? I mean, there are some guys that, again, if somebody went in with a clear-cut belief and was able to make everybody in that room believe, there are Jimmy G. I might be able to be talked into Jimmy G. Mm-hmm. Hey, maybe we could do it. I mean, Mac Jones, I don't know. It like I said, the answer had to be the right one.
The only pushback I would give on Jimmy Garoppolo is the second that he left Kyle Shanahan, he became a backup, and that worries me a little bit. Things didn't really go well in Vegas, and then now he's in Los Angeles backing up Matthew Stafford.
But you don't believe in Sean McVay's ability to make
that's
sure
fair.
the right quarterbacks are on the.
We saw what he did with Baker Mayfield, and we've seen that's a valid point. But at the same time, though, when you're in the position that the Steelers are, beggars can't really be choosers, right? And you got to take what the best available option is. But yeah, I mean, Mac Jones is going to be a week one starter somewhere next year. I mean, he played well enough in relief of Brock Purdy where some team is going to be that team that gives him another shot. Maybe it will be Pittsburgh. In terms of who it's going to be, and we're going to find out. And there's going to be, we can keep listing off names. Already, Mac Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo, Anthony Richardson. Hell, I will bet you, Philadelphia Eagles backup Tanner McKee will get dealt somewhere.
Another good one. That's another good name.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be teams that are looking at him and seeing what he's done the last couple preseasons and saying, all right, maybe there's something there. A big, tall guy, like a prototypical quarterback where he's big, he's got a good release. That's a guy where I can see him getting dealt somewhere to a team like Pittsburgh that doesn't have a necessarily QB1 in place for a quarterback battle. I could see him going somewhere. Maybe it's Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, that's a good name also. And the same with Anthony Richardson. Have I been, blowing up the airwaves? Oh, this guy should be playing. No, because he can't complete 50% of his passes. But maybe Mike McCarthy went in and said, mechanically, I can look. Here's how he's throwing it now. I don't believe that, but you just don't know. And obviously, he's a talented enough that the Colts moved up and took him where they took him. Looks like a bust right now, but so did Sam Darnold for about how many years? 6 years, whatever it was.
I can be talked into someone like Anthony Richardson just off the pure freak athleticism bit of it. It's the same reason why I was talked into Justin Fields, because all right, we see he's got a ginormous arm. He can run like a gazelle in the Serengeti. When you have that type of athlete, and if you can figure out how to use them, frankly speaking, Justin Fields did well in Pittsburgh, was 4-2 as a starter, protected the ball pretty well, had 10 total touchdowns. And then, you go to the Jets and there's a lot of chaos there and he, didn't play well. And that's, that is what it is. But the point being that when you have that much athletic upside, those guys are going to get closer looks and more chances than somebody, I'm not trying to crap on this guy, but like a Mac Jones, who might not be the greatest athlete and, didn't show a ton of superstardom in his time with New England. So we'll see. There's so many names that we're going to talk about here over the next, month and a half before free agency and the new league year begins. But yeah, the biggest thing today is that Mike McCarthy is the Pittsburgh Steelers' new head coach, and now we're going to see the direction that he decides to take them. Excited to see the staff that he builds, and I'm going to do my best to remain optimistic because we don't know what's going to happen. There's been plenty of hires that have been polarizing in the past and have worked out really well. And at the end of the day, this is a guy who is a good head coach who's won a Super Bowl, and you can do worse than Mike McCarthy. It's just a matter of, can he get the right guys around him, and can they get a quarterback that can help them win? And we're going to find that out here in the coming months.
Don't wander out onto that bridge, Jarrett.
We won't.
Stay on solid land.
That's what we plan on doing. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. And again, we will be back next week recapping Championship Sunday in the NFL. Shout out to our friends over at FanDuel. You can download the FanDuel app and bet on the games on Championship Sunday. New England Patriots 3.5-point favorites against the Denver Broncos. That number has dropped from 5.5, which it opened up as last Monday. So the books seem to really think that Denver is gonna shock the world here a little bit.
Couple turnovers early, they got a shot. If that doesn't happen and they get behind, probably no shot. But that's why they play the games, right?
That is exactly why they play the games. And look, we've seen it happen before. Jeff Hostetler, not to bring up old scars for Steelers fans, but Tom Brady didn't play in the 2001 AFC title game, and Drew Bledsoe won that game in Pittsburgh. So we've seen it happen before. We'll see if it can happen again when the Patriots take on the Broncos, and then the Rams taking on the Seahawks. Seattle 2.5-point favorites in that game. And we'll be back next week to recap Championship Sunday, as well as keep you up to date with everything going on with the Steelers. So if you're watching, please be sure to subscribe. If you're listening, leave a comment, leave a review, and we will talk to you all very soon.